Welcome. We are here for February and we're following along in this book that Eve Smith wrote, and it's called I Ching Predictions for 2026. So we've just completing on January and we're going to be moving into February. I'm Alice Smith, and with me is
Donald Cowdrey.
Donald. What is your background with the I Ching?
I fell into learning about the I Ching through a human design system, which includes astrology, I Ching, and the chakra system, and it mixes everything together into one chart. So that's when I first got interested in it.
So I had started with the I Ching, oh, wow, years ago when I was working in Chicago. And I had enjoyed it over the years. I've been in and out, but now that I'm getting more engaged with it, it really is remarkable to start thinking about the collective energies, not
Mhm.
just using it as a personal divination tool, but to think about the impact of the energy around us and how that might influence how the month unfolds and what's happening. So, how about we review January since
Sure.
we're completing it and moving into the next energy cycle? Why don't you go ahead?
Sure. In January, we're moving through two hexagrams. First was the mountain, which was hexagram 52, and the other one was admonishment, which was hexagram 39. The mountain was all about getting multiple perspectives, zooming in and zooming out on things. And admonishment was all about figuring out what triggered us, what were we made aware of. So that was going on through January. We received or gave some advice to other people that have either caught their attention or caught our own attention. And you can even ask yourself what happened in January that caught your attention? What was triggering for you from focusing in and out of things? Did you start to notice, or did someone tell you something about yourself that made you really look at it? Or did you tell someone else something that made them really look at themselves?
I'm so glad you brought that up because the last part of January, I got enrolled in this conversation that I've had for a while about moving closer to my daughter. So we live about 4.5 hour drive away, which is
That's a lot.
close, but not as close as when you're getting older. You think, well, it'd be nice to be an hour maybe or less. And so I got into hunting for real estate. Now, this has been a theme throughout my life, and just have to confess, we have moved 17 times
Mhm.
since we've been married. We've been married 55 years, and always it's like things don't seem right. Nothing is ever quite right. Or, oh, maybe if we went here, it would be better. I got into that old conversation trap and off we went to the races, dragging along my husband. And finally, he had a conversation with me, pointing out this was not helpful. This was a problem. And what's wrong with just living our lives and having a great life and having where we are be the right place and having it all work out as a possibility? That really pulled me up short, having to look at, well, it's my behavior that's driving all of this and causing this upset. Actually, I did not feel diminished, which is a great advance for me because sometimes in the past, when I've received advice, always felt diminished, only because that's how I responded to it. It was never intended to be that way. So, okay, just let all that old conversation go and just stay focused with what we have, where we are, and how we can interact with our daughter. Being close doesn't mean it's going to work for her to be that close, given that she's got a business and a life and all of that. I've been in the thick of the last part of January's energy, and I'm looking at the next energy in February. I'm not sure I'm all excited about moving into that, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. How
Yeah.
about for you?
I also wanted to mention for our viewers that are also following along in the book, this is the place where you start to feel frustrated. You wanted to move closer to your daughter, and it could have been frustrating that you don't live closer to her. So, this is the point of where the energy's changing to the trapped energy, which we'll talk about momentarily. For me, some of the advice I got or the awareness I got was around being organized. I went through an exercise in the Startup Society group that we're both in. You write out your own schedule, your current schedule, and then you just look where you can make improvements. And I realized, oh my goodness, look at all the time I'm wasting or I could be using more effectively. And adding the other things that I want to start doing this year, like working out more and doing more meditation and stuff like that. But if I'm wasting my time by switching gears too much throughout the day, then I'm not going to get those things. It's kind of frustrating because it's almost like a setback, but it's also great to have that awareness that, oh, okay, I can actually do something about this at some point. So that's what came up for me.
That reminds me when I was reading through the chapter, Eve talks about in the book about mindset and your
Mhm.
perception. And I keep thinking you create your own reality. That came from, I think, Jane Roberts through Seth, and I've heard it from Abraham Hicks. It's so true sometimes when you stop and think this is all story. It's a story that's not working anymore, or it's an old story when I was a different person in a different environment. What's the new story to create? And how can I empower myself and not diminish myself? Because it's not like other people are diminishing me. Many times I diminish myself by my conversations that I have.
And a lot of the time, we're not even aware that we're doing this activity because it's only when you look at how the conversation went or you reflect on things. So that was like a reflection I had when I looked at organization, and you had a reflection on where you're living. And then you got to zoom in and zoom out on that from the January energies.
Exactly.
And then you got to see a little bit more. It's going to be interesting to see where this all goes going into February, too. To anybody watching this, think about something that was brought up to you in January. What really struck your awareness about yourself and maybe some belief system you had? What triggered you or what admonished you?
About January, I know there was some talk about small steps. Seems to be
Yeah.
its theme,
Oh,
small
okay.
steps.
Like with anything, to move through any energies, it's always about taking small steps, right? This moves us right into February. You're going to start feeling trapped. We got this awareness in January. And then what we're looking for in February is this feeling of being trapped, is what's going to start happening. You're going to be up in your head about whatever it was in January. And if you just run around complaining about that, nothing's really going to change. It's really time to hunker down and look at it. That's what February's energy is going to bring to us from this feeling of being trapped to moving into steadfastness. And how do we move through whatever was brought up?
I was just looking at the last part of January before we dive into February, the admonishment part. What is out of balance? That was one of the questions. I think I put myself out of balance or feeling misaligned, like you said, with where I live and what my desires were to be
Mm,
closer to my daughter. And I made up a whole story around it because as I'm getting older, you need to be closer to family but you wanna be close, at least I do. You wanna be
mhm,
closer to friends and family. Not being there was originally kinda out of balance. I considered that out of balance for the life I wanted to live into, but I realized also by this experience of looking at the admonishment, give it a rest. We're here. We have this great place. We're only 4.5 hours away. I could have it be in balance. I could have it be okay. I could just manage when do I go up? I don't have to go in every week. I can go on occasion. It can be okay. I can maintain things by Zoom. If I want to see my daughter, we could do a Zoom call like we're doing this, or phone call. Then I noticed that towards the end of the advice I was getting from my husband, it was making me frustrated. And I thought, I want to do this. I want to make it work. I want to figure this out. And then I thought, okay, that I think is the energy I'm going into in February. Is that
yes. And what's interesting that you bring that up where the frustration comes, it's because I think you really gotta, to get out of this stuck energy, you have to figure out why you want what you want. Where is this all coming from? Why do you want to be close to your daughter? I'm going to ask myself, why do I feel I need to be more organized? This is what's frustrating. If you don't have a good answer, there's a lot of confusion around this. There's this pressure. We're not really clear on why, but you have to have a why before you take action, or you can never be determined about it. So that's what's coming in February. This feeling of being trapped because what you desire and where you're currently at are not in alignment. Me too, right? Where I'm currently at and what I desire are not in alignment. So this is just a message for everybody. This is what January made us aware of, how we're not in alignment, and it's frustrating. We've done all this work last year and now we're into 2026 and things are supposed to be different, and your mind starts telling you all these stories.
I think you had mentioned stagnation in terms of February's energy. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. In February, we're recognizing where we're out of balance in life and where our desires don't match our reality. And then there's this stagnation because you're going to be in this place where nothing's changed. You don't see that anything's changing. But what I know about this sort of energy from my human design experience is that it's always about clarity over time, reflecting on your experiences. Journaling could be a good practice for you, or meditation to get through this kind of feeling trapped or stagnant energy, because it's not that you're not moving, you're just not noticing what is moving. Things are starting to fall into place and making sense. And that's something that happens over time. That's my advice for the first part of February. When you're starting to feel like this, just know that it's a part of the energy. It's meant to pause you, allow it to start giving you some clarity. Both the energies in February are actually awareness energies in human design. February is going to be a lot of awareness. I'm aware I'm doing this, or I'm aware of how I can move forward. February is going to be great for reflection.
Structure of the book, there are many pages where you have reflective questions. It helps guide your thinking about things. Have you been able to use them?
Oh, yeah. Actually, I came to an epiphany just a couple of days ago. I read through January, but it wasn't until the end of January that the questions started making sense for me. So I went back and answered them just in the last week. And I found it a lot more helpful to go through the experiences of January, like all the energy. So read the chapter, go through them, but then go back to answer the questions afterwards, because you'll have more clarity when you're answering them and be able to really pinpoint what was happening in that month. Because sometimes life happens. This person needs driven that place, dinner needs to be made, work, all that, all the life happens. It's good to give yourself a pause to reflect.
I notice as I'm reading, I may make notes, but
Mhm.
like you said, at the end of the month when I go back, my perspective sometimes has changed. Maybe it's expanded, or there's different perspectives that have entered into my mind. It's interesting to see, to be able to reflect on that and then to write it down. I assume that as we go through the year, we may go back again to some of these chapters. I think there's sometimes during 2026 that some of the hexagrams repeat. And if you've done the reflective questions and written in your book or your journal or wherever you're keeping track, then you can say, oh, I thought that, but that was 4 months ago and this has happened. And now I think this. And you can decide if you're in a better space or not.
So this trapped energy of hexagram 47 is going to change into the steadfastness later in February, which is interesting because there's a potential for some movement. What the book recommends, or Eve recommends, is taking action, right? So when you get that awareness on what you need to take action on to move the bar, that's when you take small steps like we're talking about earlier. It seems to be a theme to always practice taking small steps, and you'll make leaps and bounds towards your goal. You may not see the progress. That's okay. If you do 8 out of the 10 things, you'll get there eventually.
Or even if you do one of the 10
Yeah,
things.
even one of
You
the 10 things.
I remember back in the day, it was all about 5-year goals, 3-year goals, this year, 6 months, 3 months, 2 weeks, this week, whatever. It was all about planning this future. And if you didn't follow that future, then somehow you were wrong. But as you lived through it, you did the steps for today. Maybe it changed and it got better, or new things developed as you were going along. I think the small steps are really the critical thing and not trying to go too far because then you have to back up. If you
Yeah.
overreach, then you have to back up. That's not a bad thing because you become aware that wasn't a good move. You can try to reflect and plan and then step. But as you were talking about Eve mentioning moving, I think there was one spot in the chapters where she said, when you recognize the problem or the stuckness, act now,
Mhm.
don't wait.
Yeah. Take action. Yes. That's what I meant by moving.
When it's time to move, you need to move. No
Mhm.
more cogitating or on the one hand, on the other hand, move.
And Eve even mentions the word devotion. So devote yourself to it.
I made a note from the text where she said, with track, take direct action. That's what we are headed into in February, and it'll be interesting to see how it all turns out. What else in terms of reading the chapter for February did you notice or that you'd like to make comment about?
There's like a weight of abandonment too in some of the movements. You may feel like you're carrying the burden yourself or that you're all alone. These are all the feelings that could come up for people. These are everyday things for me too. Sometimes I feel like I have to do everything on my own. Just recognize that's a part of the movement, feeling like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders. Rather than treating it like a burden, find your way clear, then dedicate yourself to that action.
And I was looking on page 65 under trapped, where the movement of the energy, the first movement is setback. This month leads to feeling you're thinking that things are not moving forward. This sense of stagnation is eating at you. This is your invitation to begin the work of trapped. That's the first movement of the energy. And discipline, I think you talked about internal work, internal discipline, and the integrity that you have. You have certain goals or values, and how are you aligned with those in your relationships, your finances, the work that you do, your household chores? If neatness is important, but your house is a mess or you can't get clothes washed and folded and put away, what's going on here? These are all things to reflect upon.
And sometimes a tidy house can be a tidy mind. I've heard people say that.
Yeah, I have heard several people say, look around your environment because that's a structure around you or conversation around you. If it's chaotic, how are you feeling in your life? Are you feeling stressed and chaotic and upset and difficult to complete things and stuff? Maybe part of it is having your environment in a way that it supports you. If
Mhm.
tidy supports you, I've always thought tidy does support you. That seems to be a value. My grandmother
Mhm.
always sweeping the floor after a meal. Some things you just got to do. Having your environment where you can find things and it's organized, it just makes your life easy. These are things that are structures of support in your life.
Yeah, for sure.
You're laughing.
Yeah, because it's all part of that organization thing that I was made aware of. I'm laughing because the alternative is crying about it.
Now is always an opportunity to do something, a small step about it. So I have this tendency to take the clothes out of the dryer and put them on my bed, and then I'm going to fold them later. And then later comes it getting ready to go to bed. I'm
Mhm,
tired, and there they are.
mhm.
And so many times I've wanted just to pick them up and put them in a chair so I can go to bed. There's also the folding them up and just getting them put away. It takes 5 minutes.
Yeah. One tip I'll give you, everybody has their own natural cycles of energy. So you may be more energetic in the morning. So if you do your laundry in the morning, you can get it folded and put away and it's done. You don't need to tell yourself later because maybe later you have a waning energy and it's just not there. It's more of a relaxing energy. So then maybe that's a time to do meditative practice, read a book, journal, watch your favorite TV show, whatever floats your boat when you don't have the energy. But is to schedule. That's what I'm going to be working on is scheduling my life. When do I have energy? When I don't have energy?
That's a great insight.
Like, how can I actually make that work for me?
That's a wonderful reflection for this month. So, anything else about February?
February should be interesting, and definitely we'll talk a little bit about February in our next discussion, see how it went.
At the end of it, we always look at when do we know the energy shifting into the next month, which would be March. At
Yeah.
the end of each chapter, there's this section that appears in bold print so that you don't miss it. You'll know the energy is shifting towards small cattle. That's the
Mhm.
name of the hexagram for March. And interestingly, there's only one hexagram. In January and in February, there were two hexagrams. So there was a changing line. The energy changed from one to the next. But March is all about small cattle. So you'll know that the energy is shifting when self discipline and reflection give way to the testing of your integrity in real world situations. So Eve goes on to say, where steadfastness taught you how to hold firm without hardening, small cattle asks whether you can live those insights under pressure. This shift is often felt through conflict or miscommunication, the places where your growth meets resistance.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. The collective begins to stir, challenging each of us to respond with grace instead of reactivity, clarity instead of control. So that's how we'll know that we're shifting into the next energy. But first, we have the energies of February that we're going to be moving into and experiencing. So, next time we will have some fun talking about what happened and what did we see. Anything else you'd like to add before we go?
Yeah, just a little bit about the small cattle hexagram. What this is called in human design is preponderance of the small. So it's like thinking about the little things. And there could be like many little things to think about, which could cause conflicts and stuff like this. So for anyone who's not familiar with the I Ching, small cattle might not mean much to you. I just wanted to give a little bit deeper perspective in it.
And it depends on the book that you're using. There are many
Hmm.
translations of the I Ching,
Yeah.
and there's a popular one. R.L. Wing, I think, is the name of the person who wrote a workbook. And the preponderance of the small is the heading for
Um,
that
yeah.
hexagram.
So
But
it's like,
the one that Eve is working with is a translation, and it's looking at the collective energy. It's not looking at the I Ching as a personal divination. It's what are the energy currents of the world around us that will be affecting us. And mostly we're unaware. We don't think about that. We're not trained to think about how the energy is shifting and how maybe some of the reaction or anxiety or whatever I feel is the result of some of these energy patterns that are showing up. And this is just a tool to help. I think a big thing for Eve is that a lot of us suffer over things and that there are many strategies one can do to release that suffering and to move towards the life that we prefer, our goals. And so knowing about the collective energy is the purpose of all of this.
I don't know if people are familiar with Bashar the channeler. He channels an entity called Bashar, and he talks about preference. So instead of saying you don't like this or you like that, what do you prefer? So if you move through your life deciding on what you prefer, then you'll always make better or more aligned decisions.
I found that to be true.
It's
Provided
simple.
it's not harming people around you, but if you do it with grace and with awareness and values, if you hold fast to your values and alignment, then you can move towards your preferences without running somebody over to
Yeah,
get there. And that's what
awesome.
a great life is. So thank you, and we will see you the end of February. And if you would like to join the conversation, the book, I Ching Predictions for 2026, is available through Amazon. And there'll be a link below so you can check that out. Please join us or read along with us so you know where we're headed. And for those of you who are interested, tell me the name of
Oh,
your business.
the name is Hidden Path Human Design. I help individuals with their brand messaging if they've been in business for maybe a little while, but they're starting to feel depleted. Maybe it's because they're out of alignment. So I help people align themselves using human design, which also attracts aligned customers and everything just falls into place. So I have an 8-week offer that I'm working on.
Have a link
Mhm.
below. Now tell us, should
No,
they contact you by email?
still by email.
Exactly, small steps. And a link to Eve Smith's other work. She has several publications, courses, and programs that may be of interest. So check out the description below. Thank you, Donald. Always love your insights. It's wonderful to have this conversation with you. And I will see you towards the beginning of March.
Thank you. Always nice having a conversation with you too, Alice.
Everybody.
Bye.